Hey,
Hi,
everybody.
Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Miss Honoree. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Oh my gosh, so good. We
We're
just spent the
here.
last hour like strategizing something, which is so fun.
I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to talk about it, though. It's not my thing to talk about.
Well, we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later in the broadcast.
There you go.
But how are you?
I'm doing well. For those that don't know, I'm Lucas. I help nonfiction authors create courses from their books. Honoree.
Oh, I'm Honoree Quarter, and I help everyone who wants to write a nonfiction book to write it, publish it, launch it, monetize it, market it,
All the
repurpose
things.
it, all the things. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And
And we could have timed that better. Go ahead. Your and.
no, you're and first.
I was going to say, and you kind of specialize in one of the things we're going to talk about, our
I
main
do.
topic today.
I sure do. I
You do
sure do.
those.
Yes. And what I was going to say is, and you can work with almost anyone to either write and publish a book or create a course. But if you want to create books and courses that are going to give you what I affectionately call the 10 by 10 return on your investment, so 10x your investment year over year for 10 years, then we are the folks you want to talk to.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we haven't had a chance to catch up because we went right into I have an idea I want to share with you. So that was super fun. And so I want to know what you're reading. You've been reading anything?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. So I finished The Redemption of Morgan Bright from
Okay.
Chris Panettiere, and it was
Hmm.
just so good.
Okay.
So big shout out to Chris. His book is doing very well right now, and it's deservedly so. It's a really good story. Yes, it's in the horror, little ecological, psychological, really cool premise set in basically an old asylum in the plains of Nebraska. So kind of cool. And I'm now getting close to the end of the book Mary from Nat Cassidy. And he is just an exceptional talent as a horror writer. So that's what I've been mainly consumed with outside of writing.
And you're going to something,
StokerCon.
StokerCon in
That's right.
San Diego.
That's right.
When is that? What are the dates of that?
29th, May 29th through June 2nd.
Is that like after Memorial Day?
Before.
Yeah. Memorial
After?
Day would be the 27th.
After. Yeah.
So
the
I'm
weekend
going to
after.
be on my own. You're going to leave me to handle this all myself. Is that what's happening for that week?
Might be a good John Stongi week.
Might be a good John Stongi week. Also, Jen Blake is doing something cool. And so I'll talk to you about that because we need to have her on as well.
Excellent.
Super fun. So those are your fiction that you're reading. Have you read any nonfiction?
Unfortunately, no. So not in the last week. It's been I've been fighting just to get the fiction reading time.
Yeah.
Which also supports my podcast, my fiction podcast. So
Sure. Your podcast is awesome. Your fiction podcast is awesome. Tell everybody the name of it.
It's titled "The Suspense Is Killing Me."
Yeah,
and I have some really, I mean, I guess the entrance criteria to be a guest on the show is you have to be a really good person and a talented indie author or publishing author in the thriller, horror,
all right,
suspense genres. So
I'll get there. Someday I'll be a real boy and I'll get invited. But I want to say hi to Joe and Justin.
All right.
Joe Carlisle.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
And Justin Good
There's
morning.
Justin.
Yeah.
Good morning, Justin.
My older brother.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said something. I wasn't seeing
Aren't you
chat.
gonna ask me how he's my older brother this week and my younger brother last week?
Well, in my mind, I was thinking, even if he was your younger brother, you'd probably just call him your older brother. But sure,
Fair.
what's your explanation?
I decided to change my birth year
Oh,
to be after his. So now he's older. So he's taller and older.
that works.
Yeah. And then we have Kyle. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
I was just thinking about you, Kyle. I literally just messaged Lucas about you last week. So you must have ESPN like we do.
Kyle, let us know how the book's coming along.
Yeah. Tell us what's
Drop in
going
the
on.
chat.
Tell us what's going on. Yeah. So
I'm writing a note down here. Sorry.
that's all right. I'm making a note of the things that we're talking about.
You're such
They
a good.
They can go.
You're
in
so
the
good at that.
show notes. Well, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the guy mentioned something, and then I went to look in the show notes for it, and it wasn't there. And so then I had to be left to my own devices to do a Google search and find it on my own, and that was pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still not over it, honestly.
You look so distraught. You're just a mess.
I'm in distress. This is my distressed face. Actually, if I were to be distressed about something, it would be about the tornadoes that came through Middle Tennessee last night. And I'm not sure what happened to the rest of the county. And I can't get out to see because we have a tree down over our driveway. So I'm merrily ready to go to the gym this morning and get my run in. Our driveway is super long and it goes straight down. And I come around the corner. I can't leave because there's a tree that hasn't come all the way down. It might be down now if the weight has gotten to be enough, but it's hanging. So I couldn't fit my car under. So I just took a photo. And then I'm not the world's best parker or backer-upper. I can haul ass with the best of them. My favorite speed is in the 80s. But reverse up the hill is not my favorite, especially when there's a gully. Is that what it's called? That little area on the side of our is it a gulch?
Yeah.
Is it a gully? It's a place you don't want to end up in your car in.
Yeah, it's kind of a
run
down the hill into the woods kind of thing.
It is. It's just it's not good. It would not be favorable. No, and not in any car, but not in my car. No, she's pretty. She's too pretty to go in the gulch. So I had to back up the driveway very, 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 very slowly. But I want to give a shout out to Brittany because of Brittany, I got a walking pad. You know how Brittany has one in her chambers?
Yep.
And so she told me about it and sent me the link, and I ordered the walking pad. And so I use it under the desk to make my day a little more active.
Sure.
And I was able to just come right home and jump on the walking pad and get in my 2 miles and listen to a podcast.
Nice.
Make a phone call. I think I did. I think I ended up I made a phone call at mile 2. So I think I made it almost to 2.5 miles. Yeah. It's amazing how I'm not paying so much attention to my feet if I'm running my mouth. And then it seems shorter. Anyway.
Distraction.
Yes, I was distracted. I was saving someone from their upcoming bad decision, I think so.
This is why in boot camp they tell you to go to your happy place. Distract yourself from the pain.
Don't we have to sing in boot camp? I don't know what you've been told.
Yeah, it's hard to sing when you're when
you're trying not to die.
What we used to call the thinking position.
What is that?
Basically a squat with either your hands straight out with no weight in them
Oh,
or
yeah,
a rifle in them.
mean. That's just mean.
Yeah, so whenever you needed to think about what you had just done,
Oh,
they would say, thinking position, take.
maybe I should start awarding people thinking
Thinking position time.
positions when they do things with their books that are not advisable.
Yeah, the secondary option was the up push-up position, right? So you're in
Oh,
the
just
up
in
position.
plank? Just in
Yeah,
plank.
they'd say on your face, which meant get down, and then you're supposed to wait for them to tell you down, up, right? Like that's
Supposed to wait.
yeah, they don't.
But sometimes
So you get in the upper position and you're like, all right, we're gonna do push-ups, and they just keep talking. And you're like, okay, we're just doing a plank on our hands at this point.
okay.
And then they'd
Oh, but
say,
I
you know
guess it
what?
prepares you. It
Yeah.
prepares you for what's coming.
Yeah. And then they
Yeah.
change their
All right.
minds and make you stand up. And then they're like, you know what? Go back on your face again. And you're like,
Yeah.
we're just gonna keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today's topic, when you
Oh, Kyle
oh
said bringing back bad memories. Oh, yes, and
yes,
Joe's a Marine.
there you go.
Kyle's Coast Guard.
Yep.
Yep.
So some of my most fond memories of that time was just how excited I was. We were getting a rifle, like you're just so ignorant. You don't know anything. They're like, you're going to get your piece today. They call it a piece. I was like, sweet, we're going to have like a rifle. This is going to be cool.
And then it weighs 50 pounds.
And then you realize you have just under 11 pounds of torture in your hands now.
Okay.
That's really what it's about.
Hey, the sun's out. That's nice. The sun just came out. Did you see that?
No, I did not see that, but I see it
Okay.
now.
Okay. Yeah. We had it's funny. Yesterday I was meeting someone for coffee and he said, we're under some kind of a tornado watch or warning. And I was like, yeah, but none of that can happen until we're both home. So it's not happening
Not now.
until we get home. But what are we talking about today? I know.
The power of short and mini books. And
Mhm.
some people are going, what the heck does that mean? It's like, I think I wrote in the description, when we say we're writing a book, oftentimes we think novel,
Yeah.
big nonfiction
Yeah.
book. But that's an easy trap to fall into. And there's a lot of power in a shorter book, especially in the nonfiction world. So
Yeah.
especially in the nonfiction world. And Honoree has a bespoke book business, and she does different size book projects, different lengths for different businesses. And each of those books serves a purpose, which we'll talk about today.
Yeah.
And helps Honoree kind of understand what's the best book for you and whether you should be considering a certain word count, a certain format size, all the things. And there's some considerations for that on the fiction side as well. We'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I think we should start with the reasons why what is the power, right? So what is the power of a mini book? Why is a mini book a good option?
Well, it's so interesting because there is a school of thought that a book is not a book unless it is X number of pages, that it's not a real book. And I remember chatting with a guy and showing him what I call the Better Business book, which is a book that's this size. So we're going to call this 4x7. This is this particular book. There is no such thing as writer's block, is 136 pages. I happen to know it is exactly 22,000 words because I wrote it. And it takes you about an hour if you're a fast reader, 2 hours if you're a slow reader, somewhere in between, right? To actually read the book. And so I was talking to someone about doing a book and he said, oh, you know what? I have this short book that I recommend to all my clients and they all read it. I have these other books that I recommend to them that are fuller sized, bigger books, and they never read those books all the way through. So I send him a copy of my book and he says, yeah, but it's not a real book. I need to do a real book. And I just thought, in our first conversation, you made a case for why a short book is a great idea, because you can ask someone to read it, recommend that they read it, and they're going to take the time to read it because it is not that much time. Interestingly, the very first version I had of this, which is what I'm calling a mini book. So I call this the Better Business Book because I think it is the most effective size, give or take a few thousand words, for a business person to position themselves. So you asked me what the power is. It's positioning. It checks the author box. It allows you to have enough information that someone can get excited, they can transform, they can understand you're the expert and you have the knowledge that they are seeking in a very short, compact package that initially I chose the size because it will fit into a man's suit jacket pocket.
Right.
When I brought this size to a meeting, I thought everyone's going to look at this and go, this is nothing but a glorified pamphlet. This is what's going on in my head. Even though I had this professionally designed, thank you, Dino Marino. It's beautifully done. I put it through the whole shoot and match, right? Quality is very important. I had a lot of people say, I'm excited about this because I can go from 0 to author in 3 months versus 6 months. And this is an hour or 2 hours. And one of the guys said, this is a stoplight. I can hand this to someone. I can go over the who, what, where, when, and why, and we can dive into that deeper, like what the contents of this size of a book could be in my expert opinion, right? How do you get the most bang for your book, right?
I see what you did there.
See what I did there? Like totally off the cuff too. I didn't even plan that. That like just occurred to me in the moment. The coffee must be working. So you can get the most bang for your book. You want to have a very specific formula that you follow in this process. Well, so this was a stoplight. So he literally says, I can read this book at a stoplight. I can give this to someone and they can go on their, I don't know you, I don't like you, I don't trust you journey in the course of reading that book. And then there's a strong opportunity for a call to action. And there's Renee. Yeah.
Hey, Renee.
So where the book idea came from for this shorter mini book was from Beth Walker. And we're getting ready to publish Buying College Better.
So
and
good.
She has an acronym inside her book, MAGIC. And every letter in the word magic stands for something. And she said, I really would love to have a short mini book on each one of those words, on each one of those letters, i.e. words, in the word magic. And I went, okay, well, let me run some numbers. Interestingly, editorial cost is per word. So when you're paying for an editor, you can get a great editor for 3 to 4 to 5 cents a word. You can get a great proofreader for 2 to 2.5 to 3 cents a word. So if you only have 5,000 words in your book, your editorial cost is less. However, interestingly, the design cost is not much less. It's less, but it's not much less than what you would pay for a full-size book because you still need all the assets and it's still custom design. Interestingly, these two books cost almost identical, Lucas.
To produce or to buy?
To buy.
Oh,
to
gotcha.
buy. The author copies, they're within pennies of each other,
Right.
even though one is 50 pages and the other is 132 pages. Just interesting that they have a base cost. The print cost per book was still $2.30 for the small book.
See, that's about what I pay for my novella.
I know.
Yeah.
So interesting. Mm-hmm. So the cost to produce them professionally is not significantly less than a bigger book, which means you've really got to weigh what's your goal? What's the job of the book, right? What do you want the book to do? So immediately after Beth made that suggestion, I produced this book because I sold one with Kent. Kent and I immediately sold one and have started working on it, and it will publish the end of July. Because it's a 3-month timeline on it. But the author's really excited because it's meeting all of his needs. It's going to contain knowledge to get people from here to there.
Mm.
It's going to check the box of him being an author. And the real power is in being able to hand someone something that they can use on their own time in their own way to cross the trust bridge, which I talk about in business dating. So, to tell people what that is really quickly, imagine in a new relationship, you're standing on one side of a bridge and the person doesn't know you, like you, or trust you, right? And you want them to cross the bridge and come to you where all the gold is, right? It's basically a rainbow, but it's a bridge. And so you want them to cross that bridge. Well, a short book done effectively is going to help them to cross that bridge very quickly. They're going to go from, I don't know you, I don't like you, I don't trust you, to I know you, I like you, and I trust you in 15 minutes, in 20 minutes. How long does it take to read 5,000 words? Not very long.
Right.
If a 22,000 word book can take you between an hour and 2 hours, you just divide that by 4. And you say it's going to take 15 to 30 minutes for someone to read this book and check boxes in their mind. Are you the expert? Do you know what you're talking about? Can you help me? Can you help me with my problem? Can you help me to capitalize on an opportunity? Are there examples of what you've done? And those sorts of things. So the front matter isn't different. The back matter isn't different. It's just the amount of content is short. And it really it is important to think about word economy.
Yeah.
In what you put in the book. You can actually say a lot in a very little amount of words and of space. And so I think the power is in the fact that it gets you to your goal of being an author faster. And
Gotcha.
I have gotten zero pushback on it. And I hang with some pretty beastly folks, right?
Yeah.
And not a one of them is like, no, I don't think it's too short. No, I don't care. There are no words on the spine. All of the things, all of the head noise that I had around it. And they're like, it's more affordable to do it from a bespoke book publishing
paying for a
perspective.
project.
Paying for me to handle it and to take care of all of the details is
Right.
not a major investment. So anyway, I think the power comes in that it is relatively fast and easy still at a high quality. It takes less of a commitment for someone to read it, which means it's going to increase the likelihood that you're actually going to read it. How many times, if you're an author, how many times have you given someone a book and asked someone a week, a month, a year later, and they're like, oh, I haven't had a chance to read it because it's time, right?
Yeah.
Which means if they've read it and they're the right fit for what you do, this then means they are likely to take action and engage you, as long as the contents of the book and the CTA, the call to action, are clear.
So for people that might not be familiar with how a bespoke book project works, and why this is kind of important, just a point of clarification, because you had said you had sold one.
Yeah.
If you're an author and you're seeking a publisher, you're basically trying to get a publisher to buy the rights to publish your book, is really essentially what's happening.
Correct.
When you do a bespoke book, you're essentially self-publishing.
You are the publisher. Yes, you are self-publishing professionally.
But you're paying a professional to help you develop your book.
Correct.
And they bring the team. They bring the cover artists. They bring the editor, the proofreader. They bring all the firepower. So you don't have to worry about assembling this team and figuring out how a good book should be produced. That's all there for you. Now, I want to make a really important distinction. That is not the same thing as a hybrid publisher, who is
you see my poker face? I'm keeping poker. I'm not even making a face at all. There's no face.
Because a hybrid publisher often puts the cost of the publication on the author, but retains rights to the book in some instances. And so they want to publish your book, but they also want to share a lot of the cost. That is not the same thing as a bespoke book project, where you are working with a team that you hire to help you develop your book, and you own the rights, you own the leverage, the IP, everything. It's your book.
Correct. My authors retain the rights, the royalties, the content,
Right.
all of the details, the ownership, the copyright, all of those things are retained by the author. They just don't have to figure everything out themselves.
That's right.
And they have someone, me, who not only assembles what Beth calls the dream team. She's like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I have the dream team. Um, they're published everywhere based on what their goals for the book are and what the goal of the book is for the author, right? What the job of the book is
Right.
in the author's business. And I am the person who has sold almost 5,000 books, Lucas. My number is getting higher, getting closer to that 5 million mark.
I say
And
you just said 5,000.
I said 5,000. I meant 5 million.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Big difference.
Big difference. But just 3 zeros.
Right. Yeah.
What's a couple of zeros among friends? Yeah, I'm of 4.7 million copies sold in 40 languages.
Wow.
And I've published this mini book of goal achievement is book number 65 for me, and then hundreds of others that I've worked on. So
Yeah.
I know how to publish professionally and market and sell books and turn them into revenue streams. So the most fun part of the project for me is to get into the head of the person who's the author and figure out how they're going to monetize it. It's my very favorite part of the process. So I don't want to dive too much into that. If anybody has a question about that, they can, of course, reach out to me. I will say that I do have 4 general sizes of books at 4 different price points and 4 different timelines. And it's custom, it's bespoke, it's custom to the person, right? So no 2 books are exactly the same. And no 2 marketing plans are exactly the same. And in many cases, my authors make back their investment before they publish, which is really fun.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I explain that
Yeah,
because
thank you.
for people that aren't familiar with how the what their options are, it's not an
Right.
option you hear about often, honestly. I mean, especially on the fiction side, you almost never hear about like someone basically helping you publish your book without
Right.
being a publisher or a hybrid publisher or a small press and indie press, that type of deal.
Right. What I
Um,
do is I'm an outlier. I think
Yeah.
I'm the only person who really
It's
does what
wonderful.
I do in my space. So, it's the difference between suits, right? For men,
Yep.
you can buy suits in many places at different price points, or you can go to Italy and have a little guy named Giuseppe custom make a suit for you. And in this case, I am Giuseppe.
You are the little
Yes.
Italian guy,
I'm the little Italian guy.
which is ironic coming from a little Italian guy.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes. Yes.
See how quickly this can devolve.
I think we're going to be talking about lasagna and ziti pretty soon.
I love it. Okay, so can we shift a little bit so we understand why the book,
Yeah.
like why a mini book has power.
Yeah.
I didn't have to think too much about this stuff when I first started considering writing a book because I had Honoree at my disposal to talk to and
Right.
to say, hey, like, how should this look? There's a lot that goes into that. And I have 2 different nonfiction books in a series, but they're published in different sizes. The word count's different. The format and trim size is different.
Yeah.
And that was intentional.
Yep.
And in my opinion, the word count had very little to do with why I chose the format I chose, but there are limitations. If you have a short word count, you obviously can't just have this massive trim size book, or you're going to have this really thin book and it's going to look weird. So,
Yeah.
well,
you can. There are things you can do to increase your page size if you really want to get to the
sure,
to the crossover point of having words on the spine. There are things that you can do.
Right. Yep.
But nevertheless,
yeah, it's not the meat of the book.
right.
So can you talk to me a little bit about what's the word count difference between a mini book that you produce and maybe the next size up in your business?
Mini books are around 5,000 words.
Okay.
When I'm producing a custom book, there's a word window.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a target goal for word count. For the mini book, it's 5,000. For the Better Business book, it's 15,000. So obviously I overshot that with Writer's block,
Okay.
right?
Which I love.
What?
I love
I
that book.
literally don't have writer's block. I wrote too many words.
The irony.
The irony. Yes. But there's a window. There's a window that we're shooting for, because I think a lot of people don't take the time to do the pre-work before they sit down to write a book. They just go, I'm writing my book. I have a book title in my head, which may or may not be an effective book title. And then they're off to the races. And then they
Whip up an
have
outline.
80,000 words or 40,000 words or 200,000 words. And they go, I'm 80% of the way done with my book, because in their mind, they're almost done with the first draft, which means they're just 20% away from having a finished book. And I would submit that when you are done with your first draft, you're about 20% of the way done with your book. So it's really the opposite. It's like 20% is writing the first draft. It's like if you give birth to a child and you're like, well, thank goodness we had our baby.
Wasn't that fun?
He'll be off to college here any minute. And then, right. And then you realize, oh, wait, they're going to be on the payroll for almost forever. We're never done with them. Right.
Right.
So I think it is flipped. I think at the finished first draft part, you're about 20% of the way done before publication. There's a lot left to do in that process.
So, yeah, because I mean, this really gets into, what is the obligation of the writer, right? They have to get the same message across, but they have to be very punctual. 5,000 words. I mean, you can eat up 5,000 words quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly. And with the next size, the Better Business book being closer to 15, obviously there's 3 times the word count there.
Correct.
So some of it is I'm making an assumption here, but is related to the scope of the topic, right? Like you're not going to,
of course,
you're
not solving anyone's problems or every reader's problems in 5,000 words.
Right.
As a matter of fact, you're just giving them a line of sight to how their problem can be solved. Interestingly, all of my bespoke books come with a ghostwriter, because one of the major time considerations of writing a book is the actual writing of the book. And when you are using the services of a professional, they write very quickly. Just to give you an idea, I wrote this book of goal achievement in one day. It took me about 5 hours. So I love that. Joe said, sounds like kind of the difference between a wedding and a marriage. Yeah. Like the wedding is where people put a lot of their energy, but the marriage is where, and also the difference between a wedding, which is publishing, and marketing is marriage. Right. So
yes,
nevertheless,
everyone loves marketing. Everyone loves being married.
Do they? But the main question I get is, well, if I write the book, does that make the cost of you producing the book less?
Right.
And the answer is no. Right. Because if you're a first-time author, if you're a fifth-time author, you know what you're doing.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. So your amateur status as a writer, all respect intended.
Sure. It's true.
Right. Means that I have to then do more work. Everyone has to do more work, right? The editorial, I need a book doctor instead of just an editor. An editor can do quite well and quickly with a professional writer's draft. If we throw an amateur in there, then the costs of the book increase significantly, and they're equal to or more than the cost of the ghostwriter, interestingly. Yeah. So that's the number one question that I get. We should probably do a whole session on this, right? Where we just talk about bespoke books and what that looks like. Maybe sometime in the future we'll do that.
The bespoke book experience.
Yes.
So getting to the structure of the book.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the concerns that someone might think of is if I have a reduced word count, does that mean I have less real estate to connect with the reader? And I mean, you and I both know that, even though you have a shorter runway, your words have a tremendous amount of impact rather quickly in a book.
Yes. You can
So
date for 7 years or you can date for a week,
that's
right?
right.
So
That's right. So
yeah.
how do you kind of maximize the opportunity to connect with a reader on a mini book with something that short? What do you kind of do to make sure that happens?
My goal achievement book notwithstanding, because I was really just publishing it for size. I really wanted to see what 5,000 words would yield from a professional standpoint. So I didn't
Mm,
come at it from the strategic position that I have developed, because I would never just, I mean, my books, I can just go, I'll just publish a book and see what happens, right?
right.
I would never do that with someone else's book. And I
Mm,
wouldn't want them to do it with their own book. What I think about is strategy. I'm thinking about what are the questions that the reader will want answered about the person whose book they're reading in order to make a decision about whether we're engaging at a higher level or not.
mm,
Simple as that. And so, what are those questions? They're different for every person. I like to call them the W questions: the who, what,
mm,
where, when, why, and how. Because if we can answer who is Lucas Marino, what does he do? Why can he help me? What does working together look like? Where do we do our work together? How much does it cost? Those sorts of questions in a way that is beneficial to the reader and helps them, sharing stories and examples, because what you don't want it to be is a brochure is buy this, buy this, buy this, here's why. A book needs to solve a problem for a reader and help them to capitalize on an opportunity or both, right? So we want them to avoid pain and or gain pleasure. So in the scope of those 5,000 words, we can just make one up on the spot for you, Lucas, if you want. We
sure.
can like real time,
Okay.
unplanned. So if I screw it up, I don't know what to say. I have had coffee. We'll see what happens.
Uh,
But if I were to put together a mini book for you for the coursework that you do, right? You
right.
have also a bespoke course creation option for people who want to have a course,
Right.
but they don't want to do a lot of the heavy lifting. I would want to set the stage for why you're the expert in that space by talking about a course that you have and a course that you've developed and for who. So who's that person that you've worked with? And I have one in mind.
Mm,
Right? You and I have
sure.
had the same client in the past. So I have this
Yep.
particular guy in mind, and he had a book and it's very complex. So his course would be very complex. And so what did that course look like? How do you put the curriculum together? What was his involvement? What was your involvement? What was the end result? What's the potential revenue from something like that? Um,
Right.
Things like that. So talking about what an ideal client is without saying my ideal client is 5'2", eyes of blue, went to
Right.
Notre Dame, works in, healthcare, things like that, right? You would want to use them as an example because we see ourselves in the stories of other people.
Right.
And so just giving examples of how you're helping people, not different very much than a Better Business book. You just don't have as much real estate. You've got to be
Right.
really intentional and purposeful with every single word.
Right.
And that's to keep the word count down so the reader can quickly feel successful. In the best-selling book formula, my book, which is exactly 15,000 words, I talk about the 4 keys to a best-selling book, which ultimately becomes a best earning book. And the number 1 is it has to be easy to read. It has to be at a grade level that people can read and read quickly and feel successful. So if you're using too many $10 words, 25-cent words, whatever you call them, the minute I feel stupid reading something, I might look up 1 word, but I'm not going to look up 7.
Right.
Please don't talk over your audience to show that you're smart. I think the smartest people take really complex ideas and simplify them so anyone can understand them. That's your job in your book, is to really simplify how the person could benefit from engaging you. It is much more sales letter, much more brochure than just a traditional transformative nonfiction book. we are doing these books with the idea in mind that the person who's giving out the book is wanting the person who's buying or being gifted the book to hire them, or to at least have an understanding of what it is that they do. There's a very specific outcome for this type of book, a little bit different than just a nonfiction book. There is no such thing as writer's block. My book from last year, there's no outcome for it. I have no course that goes with it. There's no workbook. There's no journal.
It's topic based.
It's topic based. It's really just to help all my writer peeps to write as easily as they breathe. That's why I wrote the book. I don't want anyone to hire me to get rid of their writer's block. Right? It's because it's
I
kind
could
of
just
like
imagine those conversations.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like when I went to a Tony Robbins event many years ago. There was a woman who was like, "Okay, Tony, I'm going to get my weight loss plan together," and she's like, "And I'm going to hire a trainer, and I'm going to research the best footwear and the best treadmills and the best weights." And he's like, "Ma'am, all due respect, you just need someone to stand behind you and go run."
Yeah.
So that's what it would look like for me. I would just say, put your butt in the chair and write until you write as easily as you breathe. Now, there's a lot more to it than that. Obviously, I'm being a little unfair, and everyone knows that. So anyway, nevertheless, that's what, if you called me and you said, Honoree, I have writer's block, I would be like, Lucas, run.
Thinking position, take.
Because I'm coming for you. Yes, I'm coming for you. Thinking position. Because it's amazing how quickly the words will flow when you're in plank.
Yeah.
You'll be like, "Oh wait, just give me my keyboard. I'll write. I swear,
I'll do it. I'll explain. I'll explain.
I'll do it. I'll write anything. I'll write. I'm writing. Right. So, nevertheless, I think the one of the other powers of these very short mini books is that the person who is using the book is generating business with it, and the person reading the book has a very clear line of sight to whether the person who gave them that book is the person that they need to hire, because in the pages of that book, they are going to hear their voice. They're going to get to know them better. They're going to cross that trust bridge. They're going to gain some insight. They're probably going to gain a couple of pieces of information that they didn't have before that they can utilize soon.
Oh, I'm sure.
Or right now. And then they're going to say, if this is what I get from this involvement of my time of, again, 15 to 30 minutes of reading time total, then what do I get if I hire Lucas, right? If I can go from, I don't have a course, to I understand curriculum development, landing page, to do pre-sales, beta of the course, any corrections being made, launching the course, whether to have a course that's always available for sale or open enrollment on occasion, like all of those things. You could talk about all of those things in 5,000 words and give people a line of sight and understanding, and then go, the success is in the details. Your success is always in the details.
Right.
And you don't want to try to do it without whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Right? You don't want to buy a house by yourself. You don't want to invest your money by yourself. I mean, I'm just making things up. I wouldn't. I didn't have me when I first started, so I made all the mistakes. Woohoo! Right? You want to have an expert, and your mini book can take people on that ride with you, and they can very clearly come to a yes or a no. And they're not going to delay reading it, because they can read it while they're reheating something in the microwave. It's really that fast.
So I mean, we're obviously speaking specifically about nonfiction, and we're talking about nonfiction mini books that are related to the expertise of the publisher, the author, the person who's essentially, the way I look at a mini book if I'm looking from a business owner's perspective, man, give me this book to hand out like candy, right? I'm going to hand this book out to everybody. I might even use this 5,000 words to solve one very specific problem.
Oh yeah. The M in magic stands for money, and money using money to, invest in your kids' college. Right.
And there's so many other letters that you could learn about either in another book or by hiring me and having all this taken care of. I mean, you're just giving them that, you're giving them that glimpse. And like you said, for $2.30 for publishing, just fantastic. All
You
right,
pay
so
more
let's.
for that sometimes than for a business card. I know you
Yeah.
want to switch into fiction and talk about that,
No,
but
I wanted to
Joe
answer
has a
Joe's. Yeah, I
Joe
want
has
to
a
answer
great
Joe's question
question.
first. So Joe asked, would you say the mini book is better for the brand new author or harder because they don't yet understand the ancillary platforms?
I
Now,
don't understand ancillary platforms. What do you mean by that, Joe?
Joe, are you talking about like Amazon and Ingram Spark and Draft to Digital and like all the places where I have to publish? Or are you
Come
referring
in,
to a
Joe.
different?
Joe, come in. Over.
we're gonna assume the thinking position until Joe.
Yes. No, we're not. You
Says,
are. You can. I'm
um,
fine.
I
I'm
will say
fine.
this.
While we're
Uh,
waiting for Joe, no
yeah.
pressure, Joe. Type faster.
Once Joe provides a little bit of an expansion on that, I would just say this, that you said something very important that's related to this, and I'm just assuming that this has something to do with what Joe is asking. Probably not the whole thing, but the amount of work that goes into the book is fairly consistent regardless of whether it's a
Correct.
mini or a business book. It's just the amount of time it takes to draft the original because of the word counts different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but you still have to have all the same platforms. You still have to have all the same support
Correct.
team.
Correct.
You don't get to cut the
Yep.
team size. All that stuff is still
No,
there.
the members of the team are still
Yep,
the same. We still have
that's
5
right.
guys on the field.
That's right. And you still have
Right?
to price the book. You still
Right.
have to market the book if you
Yes.
want to put it up for sale. Some people,
Yes.
to a previous example of handing it out like business cards, some people just literally do this for that type of application.
Correct.
They want to
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
self-publish, order a bunch of them, and they don't really sell them, but they hand them out as a
Right.
or they give them to clients as a part of their offer.
That's right. That's
Right.
right. But you would want to, that's part of your strategy,
Sure. Yeah.
is to really decide that ahead of time. And there are certain things that could be important to, if you're just going to pass them out, your front matter and your back matter might be different.
Right.
If you are making them available for sale, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you
Yeah.
increase your discoverability unless you're doing a special edition or you just have a specific purpose for your book? You probably want to do that. Okay, so he's saying no, things like the course podcast, familiarity with the process of publishing the website and social media. So Joe, the size of a book, whether it is a 5,000 word mini book or a 70,000 word full size book, 70,000 and up, it depends on the job of the book. It depends on what the author wants from the book. What's in it for you as the author? What do you want the reader to do after they read the book? And how many words do you need to answer that question?
Right.
So if you probably wouldn't do a course on a mini book. But you might have a course that's a companion. I wouldn't have a goal achievement course, using my book as an example, because I really can't use the one I'm working on yet, for a client.
Right.
I wouldn't do a course on money necessarily for Beth, but I might do a mini course. I might do a webinar type thing, an hour type thing.
Yeah.
So
I was
you
just getting
have,
ready to say you could do a mini course.
right, you can do
Yeah.
it, but I'm saying it all comes down to more than what we can answer in a general sense
In 5,000 words.
in 5,000 words.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
do you have a podcast? Do we have a podcast called Buying College Better? Is there a podcast for that? Or is there a podcast on money? Right? The
Right.
longer book, it makes sense. Is there a workbook or a companion? Probably with the longer size book.
Right.
Again, as what Lucas says is real. There are still 5 guys on the field. You still have your team of people. Publishing is still the same. You still need all of the same files. You need print ready PDFs and print ready PDF for the cover. You need the front JPEG. You need the EPUB. You need the square image. You need an audiobook of some kind. They have to be published across all of the platforms if you want global distribution, or you're going to go strictly with Amazon. There are so many questions to answer that all require some thought and some knowledge and some insight and information. As far as the website and social media, that's going to be pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your launch strategy might be different. You might just drop it. as opposed to doing
Right.
the advanced reader team. It may not be necessary to do that, or you might have an abbreviated. This book I'm working on, we're definitely doing an abbreviated art sequence for it. And
Yeah,
the
for those that
social
aren't,
media will be the same.
yeah, for those that aren't familiar, an art is an advanced reader team. It's usually an amount of time you give a team of people to read your book before it's
Right.
released.
And you don't need 3 weeks for a full-size book.
That's right.
You need just a weekend, maybe 2 weekends for people to really get through it and set them up to engage those algorithms, leave those reviews. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of variables there, Joe.
But I mean,
Given the
also,
ideas.
you know, if you're working with a bespoke book project, it's different than doing it all on your own. You're not going to feel the word count once you get past the word count and you start publishing, and to Honoree's point, we were just saying, you need all the people on the field, all the same work is done. You're going to work just as hard to get that mini book produced, whether you're familiar or not.
It's just going to take less time. I'm still going to do 37 reviews of the book, but reviewing 5,000 words 37 times and reviewing 70,000 words 37 times is a completely different time commitment.
Your editor's not going to need as much time. Your proofreader's not going to need as much time. Hey, Michael. Okay. So it's funny because certain industries, particularly certain publishing approaches, kind of draw lines in the sand when it comes to word counts and different types of books. You see this a lot in the fiction world. I would say almost
to be X number of words.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't qualify, or it's a novella, or it's a what are the other words?
Novelette.
What's the difference between a novelette and a novella?
Or a chapbook. So I'll start with the smallest ones first. The chapbook is really small, very good for poetry, very short flash fiction type stuff. The chapbook is usually no more than like 1,600, 2,000 words, right around there. It's really short, but they're tiny and they publish in right around 15 to 30 pages in this little tuck it in your pocket kind of easy thing. So it's really popular for poetry, not so much for longer fiction writers. Novelettes are longer than a short story. And a short story is usually somewhere between like 2,500 and 5,000 words. A novelette's usually from that up to a novel size. So anywhere from 5,000 up to like 19, 20,000 words.
Yep.
Joe had a question. Sounds like it really does come down to the goal of the book. Yep. Yeah, exactly. A novella is roughly 20,000 words up to, and this is where it gets a little subjective. If you do Google searches and stuff, they're going to say 40,000 words or above. But when you go to a publisher, they're going to want 50 plus, and it's going to be genre specific usually.
Yep.
So, Kindlepreneur is actually, Dave Chesson at Kindlepreneur. They've got a pretty good article on how genre impacts word count. So, well, as a writer, you might be thinking about what's the minimum, and for like a novel, it's 40,000 plus. But depending on the genre you write in, they may not even look at your work unless it's 50 plus, and that's like any adult fiction. But for example, horror, like if you're in a lot of the horror thriller spaces, 50 is the floor, right? Like,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you look at fantasy averages over 100,000.
Oh my gosh. Remember last year when we were at in Vegas, and my friend Galen, he writes epic fantasy, and his books are 250,000 to 300,000 words, and he writes one a year. He writes one book a year, but epic fantasy is a lot. I mean, epic fantasy is maybe like Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
So I can't think of another series off the top of my head that's epic fantasy because I don't tend to read it, but those books are wordy.
Yeah. Well, they've got a lot of world building and characters and things like that. But here's kind of the way to think about this. There's a minimum, and then there's the average. And the minimum is like you just crossed into the eligibility, right? Like we'll look at your manuscript because it's over 50,000. Like we'll look at it. but they're also looking at what readers expect. And I'll give you a
Okay.
couple of the averages from those genres to just kind of open your mind. Fantasies average 109,000 words. So even though the 50,000
Yeah.
novel is the floor, they're used to reading 100,000 ish per book. That's a lot.
Readers have an expectation of what
Right.
happens in a story, and it takes
Yeah.
an amount of time to cross that bridge for sure.
Yeah. Romance right now is probably one of the, is one of the hottest genres.
Always.
They average 91,000. So
No.
you've got this big window to work in when you get into the longer fiction.
But Tanya Kappas, 50,000 words.
Yeah, that's because she's
Southern Cozy Mystery. She's
Yep.
publishing one book a month, and so she is totally
she doesn't
cozy
care.
romantic suspense. She does not care. She
doesn't care about the average
brilliant
because
business. She doesn't care about it. She's she's marching to the beat of her own drum, and that is just fine. So these are suggestions, not mandates.
Well, I'm just telling you what the averages are.
Right.
Averages are based on a range of numbers, right? So at the bottom, if the bottom is 50 and Tanya Kappas is publishing at 50, they're novels.
Right. Those are novels. Yes.
Oh, and by the
Michael,
way,
the book is always better than the movie. Always, always, always.
And does Tanya Kappas put out one book a year?
No, one book a month.
One book a month.
She writes more than one book a month. I did want to circle back to Joe because we're at the end of our time. But if I were a realtor, Joe, realtor, real estate agent, right? Either one, the designations are different. And I were thinking of using books as my strategy. I would do topic specific mini books. I would do the mini book for first time home buyers. I would do the mini book of reverse mortgages. I would do the mini book of, buying homes in different cities as a military person. The stupid title, bad title, ineffective title. But you know what I'm saying is, like, I know a lot of people who in the military, every time they would go to a duty station, they would buy a house and then they would rent it to the family that was replacing them when they'd move to another duty station. So there are lots of topics that can be covered in those short books, and they could be location specific. Joe is in the Orlando area in Florida, which is, home of Disney. And so would you put together something around having properties, Airbnb properties? Are you allowed to have those? Can you do VRBO or Airbnb? And, how do you invest? How do you think about investing in property when you live around something that's big in entertainment? Just a thought. So there could be a series of micro books. You just have to make the business case for your book. And maybe that's another session that we do. Lucas, is like, how do you know if you should write a book or not?
Yeah.
How do you make the business case for your book or the business argument for your book? Because I think too often people get hung up on how expensive it is to publish a professional book when they're not looking at, when this book is out there and I'm marketing it effectively, what the return on that investment could possibly be. How do I even discover that? How do I think about it?
Right.
So you could start with one. Yeah. FAQs for mini book ideas. Sure.
So one of the things I just think encourage people to consider when they're thinking about whether they should do a mini book, a novelette, a novella, something like that is, are you going to self-publish this, or do you want to reach an industry? There's going to be requirements in certain story lengths or nonfiction book lengths if you're going with a traditional publisher.
Yep.
If you're going to self-publish and you're going to self-publish a book that's in a certain word count, then you need to think about the reader's expectations. I intentionally published a fiction novella before I tried to publish a fiction novel to get familiar with the process of experiencing fiction in the process of publishing, and story development and all that stuff. And then the last part is, your readers, they know what they like. And if you can give the type of reader you're trying to reach something that they like, and you're willing to accept how that works for you as a writer, then you're in a good spot. So some people love to contribute to anthologies. They love to write short stories. They just don't have a desire to publish a novel. And that's their That's their writing style. That's the world they want to live in. On the nonfiction space, I prefer to stay under 40,000 words
Mhm.
in a book.
Mhm.
I like my
Mhm.
shorter nonfiction. It gets right to the point. It's impactful. They sell great. The price point's fantastic for profit on a book. It's just, you really have to kind of find the right place for your application and what your readers want. And if you can make all that line up, you're going to be
Right.
sitting pretty.
And it allows for discoverability. The more books you have, the more
Yeah.
discoverable you are.
Yep.
Yep.
A lot of people start by cranking out those shorter things first over years before they
Gain
ever
their
step into
skills.
something bigger.
Yep.
All right. So did we forget anything? Is there any other questions, guys?
I don't think so.
Because we're at the end of our hour here.
Yeah. I think we covered everything that I had on my list about it.
Oh, one last thing. Timeline to create one of those mini books, 90 days
90 days.
on
I
a
had said that.
project.
I had said that earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like your ROI a lot.
Yeah. My ROI opportunities for a mini book are only as limited as your imagination and how
That's all
much you're
right.
willing to work for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you
Too busy to fail, right?
Yeah, hey, build the right book and it will do some amazing things when you're sleeping. So
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I don't know that we have a topic set aside for next week, so you'll have to look for it. We'll look forward to letting you know what it is, and we know. We have a whole list. We just always pick what we're going to talk about.
That's right. Joe, it was a pleasure to have you. Michael, it was great to see you again. David Jones, great job today. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, David.
All right. Renee, thanks
for Renee. Yeah.
Kyle.
Justin, Kyle.
Kyle, this might be the first time we've had you participate in the chat. That we know of. That's right.
Great. Awesome.
Excellent.
The more coasties, the merrier. All coasties welcome. All Marines welcome.
That's right. You might regret saying that at one point.
Well, now we have it on video. Justin can turn it into a short. All coasties are welcome.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Thanks, Justin. All right, guys. Well, we will see you next week. Honoree, thank you so much for sharing your expertise as always. And
same to you, Lucas.
If you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat, particularly on the YouTube channel. We'd love that. Make sure you guys like, subscribe. Go check out Empire Builders masterclass.com. We've got tons of great education resources there, particularly for those that are interested in publishing a nonfiction book and leveraging that as an asset to improve your reach, your profitability, all the great things for your business. So
yeah, and if you want to read some books and stay up all night because you can't sleep because you're scared, you'll want to check out Bury the Child and Burn the Girls.
That's right. Thank you. I'm all about keeping people awake. That's what I do.
And monetize your book with a course and course pricing strategies.
That's true.
Lucas's front list and back list is growing all the time. So keep checking out his stuff. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
All right, Joe, crayons. They are on the menu.